Today, what I really want to talk about is the Cornerstone Experience. The experience that all of you have with us in many different ways. There's the experience for the employee, how they're trying to realize their potential. The experience of the manager and how the manager is interacting with their employees, helping them to build their careers, helping them to be successful. It's the experience of executives trying to make the right decisions about how to operate the business and continue to grow the organization. But it's also the experience of recruiters who are trying to bring in the best people to the organization. The experience of many of you who are administrators who are working to ensure that you're getting the most out of working with Cornerstone. And of course, it's the experience of the HR team itself and how they're getting their jobs to make the organization successful. And really all this is about helping you to realize your potential, whether we're talking about your organization, your company, or your people. How do we make you most successful in realizing your potential? So I really want to talk about the Cornerstone Experience and all those different dimensions. But to do that, I want to set the stage. I want to talk a little bit about the future. Well, if you're a science fiction fan, you know that the assumption has always been that in the future, the world will be taken over by robots. There's all different kinds of robots that take over the world, but it's always a robot that takes over the world. Well, that's actually not what's occurred, because we're already living in the future that many of those writers were talking about. And we've already seen the world get taken over, but it's not taken over by robots, fortunately. No, it's something a little less obvious to see. The world has been taken over by software. Software has eaten the world and continues to do so on a daily basis. And we see this in so many different aspects of our lives. There was just a report that came out that over the next few years, 25% of all of the malls in America will close. 25% of all malls. That might include your hometown. Why? Well, we all know the answer. Amazon. You're shopping at Amazon. You're not going to the mall. You might be going to the mall to browse, but you're not actually buying anything there. It's being shipped to you by a drone dropping a carton off at your front door. Or if you're at my house, dropping a lot of cartons off at your front door. You know, it used to be that if you were in a big enough city, these yellow cars would come. If you stood out in the rain and waved your umbrella and jumped up and down and walked far enough up the street that you cut off the other person. The ones laughing live in New York. So those days are over, right? Uber and Lyft are now the way that we get transportation. You could do it while you're still indoors. And the car will be waiting for you outside. You know when it shows up. And what might be closer to home for HR people, we used to get together and meet. We used to actually go to the office. People would fly in. You'd have these meetings. You'd bring in food. Not anymore. WebEx. Live meeting. People are doing this stuff through Skype. They're meeting, but they're meeting virtually. And typically in those meetings, you only know if the person is wearing an appropriate shirt. I've done those interviews too. My kids are always very confused at how I'm dressed. So software is eating the world, but what is driving that? What is changing? Now, it's become an advantage, right? The advantage is this next phase of personalization. Everything is personalized now. The reason we're shopping online, much more than we shopped online 10 years ago, certainly more than 20 years ago, is because it's more personalized. When we have that experience, it feels like they know what we want. Sometimes it's a little scary, right? They know what we want before we even know what we want. And whether it's our communications, whether it's trying to pick a restaurant, right? It knows exactly where you are. So I travel a lot. A lot of times we're trying to figure out where to eat. When I get to a city, pull out Yelp, you say, "By my location," it'll tell you all the good places to go eat. Right there. It's personalized. It's built for you. It's showing you exactly what you need to know. And in many ways, this kind of personalization, which is now everywhere, is the next evolution of software. Right? The first phase, which goes back a couple of decades, was automation. We were automating things that we were doing manually, whether it was financial record keeping, or supply chain management, or basic HR transactions. We were automating things. Then came the wave of consumerization. This was really brought to us by Apple and the iPhone, where everything started to look beautiful at home, and then soon thereafter at the office. All the software started to look much better. It was easier to use. It was more intuitive, and in some ways, beautiful. Now we're in the age of personalization, where everything that you see is personalized for you. It's more and more specific to what you need, what you want. And over time, we're going to see more and more robotics. It's already started, but it's too late for them to take over the world because the software already did it. And a lot of this is driven by artificial intelligence. And advances in machine learning and deep thinking have improved the way we do artificial intelligence, which influences a lot of these things I'm talking about. So what this really boils down to is the idea of innovation. And we know quite a bit about innovation. We've been innovating at Cornerstone for quite a while. So it started back at the internet boom in '99 when we first started the company. And by 2001, we were already building out cloud computing, well in advance of most of the world. In fact, it wasn't even called cloud computing at the time. And then by 2005 had already built out not just learning management, but fully integrated talent management. Soon thereafter, adding components like enterprise social networking to what we were doing. And then realizing it wasn't just about the software, but also the service. And so working on the client success framework. And this idea of client success management is now so commonplace that Kirsten was just speaking at a conference on client success management with thousands of attendees. We have since then understood this shift to consumerization, making sure that all the software looked beautiful, and then this idea of prescriptive talent management, right? Getting more and more personalized in everything we do. So there's been a lot of innovation. And with that innovation came a lot of enhancements to the Cornerstone platform, a lot of new products, a lot of new features. And we realized at the end of last year that we actually arguably had too many different products. It was starting to get very, very confusing. And we recognized it was getting confusing for our clients. It was certainly getting confusing for our partners. And it was even getting a little confusing internally. There were just too many different products, dozens of products that we were talking about. And so we decided at the beginning of this year, understanding that simplicity matters, we decided to simplify what we were doing. To really focus not on dozens of different products, but really reframe the conversation and start talking about 4 product suites instead of many different products. And that's what I'm going to talk about today. These 4 product suites: learning, performance, recruiting, and HR. Really simplifying what we're offering and at the same time allowing us to focus on making the innovations that make each of those areas really important. Moving from being tactical about how those pieces work to becoming very strategic about how to make each of those components really successful in your organization. And I want to start where we started as a business. And we started in learning. So today, Cornerstone Learning is the most widespread learning platform out there in the world. And we've been helping many of you and many of our other clients build a culture of learning and development. And that includes all different modalities of training. That includes all different ways of helping a person get developed. From simple online classes to instructor-led training sessions to virtual programs with social collaboration and cohorts, really managing the entire training and development process at an organization. And we're doing this at scale. Last year, we delivered 360 million registrations through the system. 360 million courses taken through Cornerstone. And lest we become concerned that all of this screen time is bad for us and our brains are turning to mush from watching too much television, it's somewhat comforting to know that last year we delivered 1.3 billion hours of training that were viewed on Cornerstone. So we're talking about something that's reached true global scale. And along this journey, we've seen a major evolution in workplace learning. Right? It's changed over time. When I started the company, almost everybody was still getting trained in a classroom. There were very, very few organizations that were training anybody online, whether we're talking about online classes or virtual training. Of course, all that changed with the advent of e-learning, and over time that morphed into blended learning, where people were combining the best of both worlds, the best aspects of training in the classroom, but shortening the time and lowering the cost of those programs by leveraging the power of online training. And then over time, that morphed into social learning, being able to do these very interesting, maybe extensive programs online with a virtual cohort of people going through the program together, facilitated by an expert or by somebody in L&D that was training on leadership development or other areas. And then more recently, you had this idea of crowdsourced learning, whether it was user-generated content or prosumer creation of online training. But all those evolutions created opportunities for everybody in this room. It created opportunities to take training and development to the next level. And that evolution hasn't ended. The evolution's continued. And we're moving to the next stage of that evolution. And it has to do with the mindset of learning. And I strongly believe that a lot of this is influenced by the rise of millennials in the workplace and their expectations about their own career development. And so you've had this shift from training to learning. You've also had a shift from the employer being responsible for development of the employee to the employee being responsible for their own development. We've also seen training move from being a one-time or periodic activity to help somebody in a brand new job or to facilitate meeting of compliance requirements to a very different experience where training is ongoing. It's a lifelong process. And it's moved from being formal to much of the training being informal. So what's driving all that? Well, part of it's the millennials, part of it's the changes in what's available in the training world, and part of it is a shift in consumer expectations. But part of it also is that shift in technology that we're talking about, where technology has taken over so many aspects of society and many aspects of our jobs. So the need to train on a lifelong basis is very real. It's not just about millennials expecting to have 5 to 7 careers during their lifetime and therefore needing to continuously develop, but also the idea that in 5 to 10 years, your job is going to be different. And you're going to need to be upskilled or reskilled to do that job that exists 5 or 10 years from now. So it's no longer optional. You have to keep training. You have to keep learning. But like I said, it's also influenced by consumer trends. Right? The way we consume media now is very different than it used to be. And there's a lot of media out there to consume. So what's changed? Well, if you think about it, we've had a dramatic shift in the way people consume video over the last 5 years. And that shift has resulted in the establishment of a metaphor for how we consume video, how we find it and how we consume it. And that metaphor is really driven by Netflix. Now, there are many other video-based services out there, but all of them have adopted the Netflix approach, the metaphor of how people are finding and consuming video. The same thing's happened on the audio side. If you think about how you listen to music now, it's very different than certainly 10 years ago, but even 2 or 3 years ago. Very different today. We started out buying albums, and then that shifted to 8-tracks and cassettes, and then CDs. But all that was basically the same thing. We were buying them packaged together. And then with iTunes, we started buying individual songs. You could go just with the hits. But even that's gone now. The rise of music services like Spotify. The way we're consuming audio is completely different. We sign up for a subscription service. We don't pay for the individual songs or albums. We just pay the subscription, and we have access to an unlimited catalog of music. And that catalog is somewhat overwhelming, so we rely on other people curating it for us. Well, the next evolution of learning is clearly going to be influenced by these changes in the way we consume media. It changes the way we think about searching and discovering, training. It changes our expectations about how personalized the experience is for us. We expect to be able to rely on our peers to help us figure out what to take, what to do. And we expect to get credit for anything we're watching, anything we're doing, anything that we're learning. So how have these two things really influenced our thinking? Well, we believe that discovery of learning is going to be very much like Netflix. The same experience you have to discover what to watch next. Now, this is probably not a good example because this is actually my Netflix account. And what you'll see is that personalization doesn't always work perfectly, right? Machine learning doesn't always work perfectly. So we are very self-aware that AI, while has enormous potential, has not fully achieved its potential yet. Because, as everyone knows, it would be very odd that you're watching Liv and Maddie and Sons of Anarchy. I don't know what that says about the person, unless it was actually two different people sharing the same account. In our case, it's 5 people sharing the same account, and the kids are watching Liv and Maddie, and I'm watching Sons of Anarchy, and my wife and I are watching House of Cards. So it's a very mixed experience, but interestingly, even with that confusing setup, the recommendation still makes sense for the family. And finding things actually is quite easy. And the personalization's everywhere. So popular on Netflix doesn't mean popular for the whole world. Those shows would never show up. If you looked at the most popular around the world, it's popular relative to what we're interested in. And so we expect learning to be exactly the same way. And so that's why we're introducing a new learning experience platform for what we do. That's going to be part of Cornerstone Learning going forward. And this is following the exact same approach that Netflix takes in discovery. Now, this has been a long journey for us. It started with the acquisition of a machine learning platform company 2.5 years ago, and then building out the big data capabilities that allow us to personalize, and leveraging all the improvements we've made on the administrative side of learning management to enable personalization for the employee. And as you can imagine, when we talk about personalizing for the employee, we're talking about personalizing on all different dimensions. Understanding their attributes, understanding their interests, understanding their position and what makes sense for an employee in that position. So, in effect, taking that consumer experience and applying it to the workplace. And just like Netflix has a very consistent experience, whether you're browsing for something or you're searching because you know something specific you want to see, we are reconciling the very different experiences that exist in Cornerstone today between searching and browsing. And so the search will effectively be very similar to the browse. The tile view that we've all become used to, the ease of access, the ability to quickly save and discover things, and continue learning from where you left off, no matter what device you're using. So I wanted to invite up our AVP of Product Management, Summer Rogers, to help me show exactly how this will work.
I love Katy Perry. Thank you.
Welcome, Summer. So Summer's going to show us exactly how this experience will work in the system.
Great. So thank you for introducing what really is the inspiration that our product team has been working on to reimagine the learner's experience. And today I'm pleased to share with you one of our new product areas, new pages in the system that we refer to as Learner Home. And Learner Home is really motivating two behaviors. We recognize that it's still very important as an organization to help drive the behavior of completing the guided training, the assigned training that all of employees have to take in many organizations. So I'd like to share with you the story of Jackie, who is a creative designer. And here on the left side of the screen, we can see that Jackie's already completed many trainings. She has badges. And below, we see she has some subjects that she's interested in. I want to draw your attention to the past due section on this page. Our intention is to surface and drive Jackie's behavior to complete the training that's already past due, but give her very easy visibility into what's due soon and maybe what doesn't have a due date. And below, at the bottom, if she wants more detail on her training record, she can access her transcript from here. But in addition to helping Jackie complete her assigned training, we really want to enable Jackie to realize her potential through providing a way for her to discover self-guided learning. And so let's imagine for a moment it's her first visit to the page. We see here at the banner on the top an invitation to add subjects. And subjects is the first point on this experience that is using our opportunity with our machine learning platform and artificial intelligence to present to Jackie subjects she might be interested in. So it's informed by what we know about Jackie and what Jackie has done in the system already. So in this case, let's say Jackie wants to indicate that she is interested in learning more about UX design. As we come back to the Learner homepage, you'll notice that the banner changes. We want to offer the organization and the administrators an ability to promote something. So in this example, the organization is maybe promoting their development day and guiding Jackie to click the link to check out the sessions available on development day. So let's explore further what Jackie might be recommended. Again, using the machine learning platform and artificial intelligence, this is a very personal experience for Jackie. Now, before we explore different carousels, I want to call your attention to continue learning. We want to reduce the friction of Jackie selecting and taking training. So from our continue learning carousel, we're really enabling her to pick up where she left off, whether she was completing assigned training or taking learning that she was interested in. As we move down the page, we see a banner that is saved for later. If Jackie's on the go, checking out various learnings that are interesting to her, she can go ahead and mark save for later and come back to them and find them here. As we move further down the page, we see some additional carousels. They're really giving her personal recommendations. So top picks for Jackie are learnings that are interesting to people like Jackie. And so the system thinks that Jackie might be interested in taking them as well. We also see recommendations that are relevant for her position in the organization and that are inspired by the subjects that she's indicated she's interested in. And this is important because while we have recommendations in the systems today, we are extending that concept to include not just learnings that are taken by people like Jackie. We call this birds of a feather flock together. But when you indicate interest, we now can make recommendations that help Jackie grow in whatever area that she feels is important and relevant for her aspirations. And then we also have a carousel for the most popular learnings that are happening in the system. Now this content is all kinds. It can be long form, it can be external content from the course catalog. It's the whole shebang. Now, maybe Jackie knows exactly what she's looking for. So from the learner homepage, Jackie can go ahead and initiate a search. So let's imagine that she's thinking about learning more about design thinking. So if we go to the new learning search page, we see a very familiar experience, a very Netflix-like experience where we have tiles that represent the various content that matches her search criteria. And the few things that I want to call out to you is that the engine behind the search is very powerful. It's an Elasticsearch engine, and when she searches for a content title, it's looking at descriptions, keywords, and presenting the results in a relevancy sort order. Now, Jackie's got a meeting coming up quickly, and maybe she only has a few minutes to consider some training on design thinking. So filters are available for her to let her really hone in on what type of learning she wants to take. So if it's micro-learning, she's got under 10 minutes, maybe she can filter by under 5 minutes and find that right content, that right learning about design thinking. Adam, that concludes my ELE demo.
Excellent. Thank you, Summer. So it's not just about the discovery that we do using video, like Netflix, but it's also about the curation that we've come to expect from services like Spotify. And when you think about curation, there's multiple ways to curate something. So if you're looking at Spotify, you might have my playlist, which of course is set for Billy Idol for tonight. You have Beth's playlist, which apparently is everybody who's ever performed at Convergence. So we know why those artists were picked. Or you have the Machines playlist, right? These are the top hits, top of the charts, recommendations made based on preferences. And different services use different algorithms. That's why you could subscribe to both Spotify and Pandora, because they actually have different algorithms that result in different music selections. So as you can imagine, when you're talking about learning, and we're talking about opening learning up to everything available out there in the world, there needs to be some way to figure out what you're going to take. And so we need to have a way to help you have a personalized, tailored experience, even though there's so much content out there. Because you often want to learn about a particular topic or subject, or you need to learn for a particular career path or job that you're in currently. So how do you do that? Well, we're introducing Cornerstone Playlists. And Cornerstone Playlists will allow you to attach any kind of learning, whether it's something proprietary from the company or something that's been available online, or something that was generated by one of your employees, or by the L&D department itself. It could also be third-party content that's connected to the system. All of that becomes up for grabs when you're creating a playlist. And as you can imagine, there could be multiple kinds of playlists. Every employee can create their own playlists for themselves. Managers can create playlists for their employees. Subject matter experts can create playlists for anybody that needs to learn that subject. But you could also have playlists from the training department. The L&D team can create curated playlists for different learning paths or different types of subject matter. And of course, you could have machine-based playlists where the system itself is defining what are the appropriate kinds of training or learning opportunities to help you in a particular area. So these playlists will allow you to capture and discover other people's playlists, to follow playlists from somebody else, to share and like playlists, and also will give you recommendations as you are creating your own. So you might know what you want to put on your playlist, or you might need recommendations, and those recommendations no longer need to be limited to what is officially in your portal. It could be learning that's come from anywhere. And what we intend to do here is leverage the power of 31 million people using Cornerstone's platform. All of them being able to create different playlists, tagging content from anywhere in the world, and making that part of a global repository of learning content that we'll be creating and tagging and allowing to be part of the recommendations that go out to any new playlist created. So when you put these two things together, this idea of Netflix with simple discovery and simple consumption, and tie it to this Spotify concept of curation, you end up with a very compelling learning experience platform. And we're making it part of Cornerstone Learning. It will not be separate. It's not a separate product. It's part of the system.